The place you come to when you want complex knowledge distilled right down to its essential, really transformative insights.
And today, well, we're tackling something big, answering your request for a deep dive into a truly foundational text of modern spirituality.
That's right, Eckhart Tolle's massive work, The Power of Now, A Guide to Spiritual Enlightenment. It's really shifted the conversation globally, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's way more than just a bestseller. It's a phenomenon. Speaks to this deep global hunger for peace, I think.
The numbers alone are pretty staggering. A #1 New York Times bestseller for starters.
Yeah, and sold over 2 million copies just by the time the paperback preface was written. And now translated into what, 30 languages? It's messages everywhere.
So our mission today is clear. We want to, cut through the density and give you those core life-changing nuggets, the real takeaways.
Think of it as the shortcut, really. Understanding the central idea, Tolle's unique view, and the practical stuff, how to actually live in the present moment.
We'll walk you through his pretty startling personal awakening story first. That's kind of key.
Definitely. And then we'll unpack his major concepts, the mind and the pain body. Not just what they are, but how they actually create suffering.
And then the practical bit, how the book guides you to access presence day to day. We'll focus on the inner body and the practice of surrender, especially in relationships.
Yeah, relationships are a big focus.
And right off the bat, the book received massive praise. It wasn't just some passing trend. People saw it as a major contribution.
Absolutely. You had figures like Deepak Chopra saying every sentence rings with truth and power.
And Lama Surya Das calling it profoundly inspiring. High praise indeed.
And what's really interesting, I think, is why it got that acclaim. It seems to succeed on two levels at once.
How so?
Well, first, it somehow takes these ancient teachings, echoes of Jesus, the Buddha, and makes them super accessible for modern life. A practical manual.
Right, simplifies without losing the depth.
Exactly. And second, it makes this radical claim that our own thinking mind, our identification with it, is the root of almost all our misery.
Which leads to the idea that enlightenment isn't some far-off mystical thing.
Precisely. It's presented as something immediate, attainable,
Hmm.
even necessary, really, for peace, both personal and, global.
It's also worth mentioning how the book actually came about, isn't it? It wasn't written in isolation.
No, not at all. It grew out of real-world stuff, his
Yeah.
seminars, medication classes, counseling sessions, people struggling with these ideas.
And that's why it has that unique question and answer format, right?
Exactly. Tolle himself says it's designed that way intentionally. It's meant to evoke a feeling response in you, the reader.
Not just intellectual understanding.
Right. The words point beyond themselves. They invite stillness. He even suggests pausing, feeling the truth of it. He's working on two levels, really.
Okay, what are those levels?
One is describing human dysfunction, how unconscious we are, and the other is speaking directly to that potential for transformation, the consciousness available right now.
Let's get into that origin story then. Yeah. Because his personal transformation is just, wow. And it shapes the entire book.
It really does. Before he became this teacher, Eckhart Tolle was living in, well, constant, pretty extreme misery.
He describes it as continuous anxiety,
Right.
right? With bouts of something even darker.
Yeah, periods of suicidal depression, really deep suffering. And this wasn't brief. It went on for years, right up until he was about 30. That was his baseline reality.
And then came that one pivotal night. He was in his late 20s.
That's right. Woke up in the middle of the night feeling this absolute crushing dread. He said it was far worse than anything before, just paralyzing suffering.
Everything felt hostile, meaningless.
Utterly. The room, the silence, even the sound of a distant train, it all felt alien, threatening. The weight of just existing was too much.
And he felt this deep longing for non-existence, annihilation.
Yes, just to escape the internal torment. And that's when the crucial thought came, the one that kind of accidentally flipped the switch.
The famous line.
I cannot live with myself any longer. It just kept repeating.
And in that moment, the mind sort of split itself. He saw the I and the self he couldn't live with.
Exactly. That sudden separation, that realization, maybe only one of them is real. It just stopped his mind. Dead silence internally.
But then came fear. A void.
Intense fear. He described being drawn into this terrifying vortex like pure energy. His body was shaking uncontrollably.
And he heard an instruction.
resist nothing, and he felt himself fall, just sucked into this void.
And what was there? What happened when he came out of it?
Nothing. Silence. Then, hours later, he woke up, and the first thing he heard was a bird chirping outside. Simple sound.
But the world was different.
Completely transformed. Everything looked pristine, perfect, like it was brand new. He said he picked up everyday things but pencil, an empty bottle, and was just amazed by their sheer existence, their presence.
No mega labels, no judgment, just is.
That's it, pure presence. And this wasn't just a fleeting glimpse.
No, this lasted for years, didn't it?
5 years. He lived in what he calls uninterrupted, deep peace and bliss. No job, no fixed home, often just sitting on park benches, no social identity.
Which sounds idyllic, but also kind of impractical for most people.
Right, and he acknowledges that. But he said he felt more functional than ever before, even without all the usual structures.
So connecting that experience back to the book's core message.
Yeah.
What's the essential truth he uncovered there?
It's that the intense pressure of his suffering, that absolute rock bottom, forced his consciousness to withdraw its identification with the unhappy and deeply fearful self.
That self was just a mental fiction.
A fiction of the mind, yeah.
Wow.
What remained was the pure awareness, the ever-present I am, his true nature, before it got tangled up with form and story. That feeling of a void became like inner spaciousness.
Okay, but back to the practicality point. How does that translate for someone, dealing with mortgages and deadlines?
That's the whole point of the rest of the book. His experience was the extreme reset, the proof of concept. The book is the instruction manual for you to tap into that same state of presence within your everyday life.
Without needing the 5 years on a park bench.
Exactly. His journey proved that peace is internal. It's now not something you achieve out there. His awakening is the blueprint.
So if that presence is the goal, the first hurdle is understanding what blocks it. Tolle points squarely at the mind.
Right. Chapter 1. You are not your mind. That's the greatest obstacle to enlightenment. We think that constant stream of internal chatter, judging, worrying, planning, complaining, we think that's us.
Our identity.
Yeah. So the goal is freeing yourself from your mind. Realizing enlightenment means rising above thought into awareness.
Which is counterintuitive, isn't it? Society tells us thinking more is better.
It is counterintuitive in that sense, but he's careful to distinguish. There's the functional mind useful for tasks, and then there's the psychological mind, the source of most negativity.
And that's where emotion comes in. Emotion, the body's reaction to your mind.
Precisely. The mind generates the negative thought, I'm not good enough, and the body feels that thought as a painful emotion, maybe shame or anxiety. The body reacts to the mind's story. If you're identified with a thought, you're stuck in that loop.
Okay, so distinguishing functional versus psychological thought leads us to this idea of psychological time in Chapter 3. This seems crucial. Let's unpack the difference from clock time.
Definitely crucial. Clock time is practical. We need it for appointments, for learning things sequentially, setting alarms, planning a project. It's a tool.
But psychological time, that's different.
Totally different. That's the mind's constant dwelling on the past or projecting into the future.
Yeah.
That's where negativity lives. He calls this fixation the loss of now, the core delusion.
The delusion is thinking the past and future are real right now, when they're just thoughts.
Exactly. Think about worrying about next week's presentation. The presentation isn't happening now, it's a future idea. But the mind creates fear and stress in this moment based on that idea.
So all problems are essentially mind-made illusions.
That's his bold claim. All problems are illusions of the mind, because they're rooted either in the future, fear, anxiety, or the past, regret, resentment. Suffering needs psychological time to exist. It literally cannot survive in the pure present moment. The now just is.
Wow. So if I just focus completely on, say, washing this dish right now, instead of replaying that argument from yesterday, the suffering vanishes.
In that moment, yes, the mental story dissolves. That's why the instruction is letting go of psychological time. That's how you start accessing the power of the now. Use clock time when needed, but live fundamentally in the present.
Okay, so we have the mind creating suffering through time. But then there's another layer, this pain-body concept in Chapter 2. What exactly is that? It sounds ominous.
It kind of is. He defines it as the accumulation of past emotional pain, not just your personal pain, but also a share of collective human suffering. It's like the semi-autonomous energy field of negative emotion living inside us.
Like an old wound that keeps getting reactivated.
Sort of, yeah. It's a reservoir of old, unprocessed negativity, and it needs to feed itself to survive.
How does it feed? On more pain.
Exactly. It feeds on experiences or thoughts that resonate with its own negative frequency. It wants more pain, so it might suddenly trigger intense anger over something tiny, or pull you into deep self-pity by reminding you of an old failure.
So it actively seeks out drama or negativity.
Yes. It might make you want to argue or obsess over bad news or just replay painful memories. Anything that generates that familiar energy of suffering. Its goal, weirdly, is to create no more pain in the present, but only for itself by consuming more pain now.
And the ego is tied up in this.
Deeply. Ego identification with the pain body, the ego that constructed